I used to think that the biggest decision you'd make in this life would be the man or woman you decided to spend the rest of your life with. But having seen what I've seen in my short life and what my loved ones are having to go through uh, with men and women who, for lack of a better word, were not fit to become mums and or dads, I changed my mind. The biggest or one of the biggest decisions that you make in this life is the man or woman that you choose or decide to have children with. Now, ordinarily, or more often than not, society has it that if you're doing things correctly, you would want to be married to the man or woman before you have children. It's like a societal standard that has been set. But that is when all things are equal. We live in a society and on a planet Earth now where things are not equal anymore. People do what works best for them. Unfortunately, there are lots of children that are born these days out of wedlock. Two people allow their sexual pleasures to get the better of them without really thinking about the consequences of their actions, and end up being put in a family way when they had no plan. They didn't want it. They didn't even understand what level of commitment and responsibility is going into being a parent, and they just allowed themselves to be thrown into that without thinking. And this is where the problem lies, is that if you make that decision willy-nilly, just based on how you feel, oh, the man looks good, his dick's gonna be really sweet, oh, I need to have a taste of this, and you don't put the proper protections in place, if that is what you're choosing to do, there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. Likewise, if you're a man and you're chasing beauty and just wanting to dip it in there just because of what you're seeing outwardly, without thinking of the full ramifications of what you're doing, you also pay a hefty price for what you've done. And I've seen this, what I'm talking about, on both sides of the coin, just not with men or just women. I'm talking on both sides because I have loved ones of both sexes that are dealing with these issues that I'm talking about. Before you decide to have a child with somebody, if intimacy, sex, if that's the only reason, the whole premise of your activity, please, I beg you, protect yourself. Use the proper protection. And I'm not here promoting promiscuity, but we live in a society and a time where that is the order of the day. That's what everybody is doing. And so everybody is doing what everybody else is doing instead of thinking, about what works for me as an individual. A lot of people are just following like a flock of sheep because that's what Mr. X and Mr. Y did. That's what Y and Z did. So I'm also going to do the same thing. There's no individuality in people's decision making these days. People are not sitting to think about, how is this thing going to affect me personally? And they're making decisions on the back of other people's experiences. When you do that, you fail. And so before you decide to have children with somebody, you need to ask yourself a few important questions. Is this person responsible? Is this person disciplined? Do they take accountability for their actions or the lack of it? Is this somebody that can even cope with bringing a whole human being into this existence and be there, want to stay alive and take responsibility for what they're doing? If the answer to that question is no, my darling, please, I beg you, you're not ready or you're not fit to be a mom or dad yet. That is the first thing. The second thing, What are the financial ramifications of this thing that we are doing? And this is why I always tell my sisters that at the end of the day, you are going to be the one that carries this seed that is put inside of you. You are the one that has the pot that the soup is going to be prepared in. If you don't want your soup to go bad, if you want to have an enjoyable life, put the lid on the pot. Because you see, there are a lot of men in today's world that want to enjoy, but will not take responsibility for what they've done. So they'll meet you, they'll tell you the world, they'll promise you everything and its dog. As soon as they get in between your legs and get the satisfaction that they desire, as soon as you come to tell that person, oh, I missed my period, oh, I'm pregnant, they'll pretend as if they didn't even know who you were. They were never in your bed. They never got you to open your umama village and stick it in there. And so I always tell my sisters, think about what you're doing before you do it. Don't be caught up in that euphoria, in that moment of pleasure, and forget about the full implications of what you're doing. Because men will dip the stick in there and do whatever they have to do and be gone, lose your number, block you. And you can do whatever you want. If they don't want to be responsible, they will not. There are so many sisters and loved ones that I have, related and unrelated, that are suffering today because they didn't think about it. They didn't look more critically at these people to see whether these are responsible people that are going to look after, whether they stay together, married, unmarried, divorced, separated, whatever, that are still going to say, hey, I was a part in this process of making the child, and so I'm going to be there regardless and look after my child, provide for my child, be a dad to my child or children. Imagine having a dad or a man who gives you a bunch of children and says, the only way I'm going to give you any financial support for the children is if you show me your tax return and what you get a support as part of that tax return to see what kind of finances you or monies that you get, what your total net and gross income is before I decide whether I'm going to support you look after these children that I had with you. Oh, you wait. When I get a job and I start being financially sound, then I'll look after the children. But the children are already here. In real time, they have to eat. They have to go to school. They have to wear clothes. Their medical needs need to be met. Let's forget about the emotional and psychological trauma that you're putting your children through by not looking after them. And so please, this is something that makes me very emotional because I continue to see it. I continue to be a part of the process of experiencing it on a daily basis. And so my sister, please, don't allow any man to lie to you, deceive you, sweet talk you into thinking that they're going to be there when the chips are down. Again, because it's on both sides. There are also women that want to enjoy the dipstick inside of them, but are not fit to be moms for whatever reason. Is this person mentally, physically, emotionally sound to be able to have the child and support the child? There's so many people that have mental health issues that are dressed in good clothing and look the part. But the fact that they look good, the fact that you want to have your pleasure with them does not make them fit to be moms. And so if you're a guy and you're just chasing what you're seeing physically and wanting to enter, I must also have a piece of this. And you don't put the proper protections in place, and this woman gets pregnant. She goes through some kind of trauma. She's not even in existence anymore. Guess what? You become responsible for that child. And some very irresponsible people would run away from the children. And if you live in the Western countries, then the children get taken into care. And God knows what happens to them whilst they're there. Think critically. Pay attention to every minute detail about this guy, about this woman, before you go making children with people that were never meant. They had no business being parents. There's so many people who have been forced into that position because they chased satisfaction. It suited them at the time to get in there and do the do. And now they're saddled with children that they had no idea even what the whole responsibility thing about looking after children, what it actually meant. It is life transformational. It is a sacrificial thing that you do. Go and ask parents. There's so many people that have put their lives, their dreams, their goals on hold because they have to look after the children, be responsible for them to not end up being societal misfits that bear their name and have blood ties with them. And the sad reality is that some people do the best that they can for their children and it's still not good enough. Why? Because when the foundations of anything is not right, you can try your best to look after it, to try to tend to it, nurture it, try to change it. But you can't change what is in somebody's DNA. It's a done deal. It's a wrap. And that is God's honest truth. You cannot get a seed that is faulty, that has, technically, there are some fundamental things that are wrong with it. Like you meet a man or woman who smokes, ganja, who is on drugs. And you think that, if I get pregnant with her because I am okay. If I get pregnant with this woman or this man and we have a child, because of my good genes, my child would not also end up on that line. But did you know that people who have those substances, that it actually alters the cells inside of them? And so the offspring of that cell already has issues. People who drink excessively during pregnancy, before, during, and after, end up having children that are alcoholic even before they start knowing what alcohol is. Why? Because it's already inside of them. The same with drugs, substances. And so think about all of these things. Don't think that you can take a seed that is flawed and try to do some good out of it. The probability of that happening is negligible. And you end up suffering the ramifications of what you did. Don't allow 5 minutes of pleasure, 10 minutes of pleasure, 5 minutes of satisfaction to change the whole trajectory of your life. Because you weren't able to keep it between your legs. You weren't able to close your legs. Make sure that you understand what you're getting yourself into fully before you do it. It is too painful. You just produce innocent kids. They're never asked to be born and get thrown into, sometimes deep holes that they can't even, get out of. A word to the wise is enough in this issue, because I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I give kudos and a big shout out to all the single moms and dads that never ran away from their children, never shied away from their responsibility. And when the other parent decided not to engage, decided not to be there, ran away, whatever, or being irresponsible, you stepped up and are both mom and dad to your children. I love you more than sense. I have the biggest heart for every single mom and dad out there that is standing and holding the fort to ensure that their children have the best out of this life. Kudos to you. But all of them would agree with me that if they had paid much more of a keen attention and an eye to the people that they had children with, they wouldn't be in this difficult situation in which they find themselves today. A word to the wise is enough. I know exactly what I'm saying. And anybody who has had this painful experience would agree with me. One of the biggest, the most important decisions that you would make in this life is whose seed you're carrying. Who you decided and chose to have that child with. Whether it was unplanned for, or we didn't know, and all of that or not. The fact is the child is here. And so make that decision intentionally. Think about everything before you get yourself in a place that you can't back out of. Once the kid is here, you're responsible for him or her. Full stop. Think about what I've said. And if it resonates with you, I beg you, please share this video. Maybe you've already made that mistake and there's nothing you can do to go back, but there's somebody about to make that mistake or is thinking about making this mistake. Oh, after all, what? I have my money. I can just look after my own child. Hey, my darling, you don't know what you're saying. You don't know what you're saying. A word to the wise is enough. Mwah. Bye for now.